In the world of entertainment, animation is kind of treated like a second-class citizen, something you shouldn't be invested in, something that's silly to care about because it's just a dumb haha show. Often in the West, animation is seen as for kids, especially if it's 2D animation because of how often it's made family-friendly, and animation specifically made for adults is usually so obscene and crass that no one can seriously respect it. So being invested in an animated show is considered shameful and childish. Why are you taking it so seriously? Cartoons aren't real people. You're either being weirdly obsessive of a kid's show, or you care too much about something that should only ever be seen as a comedy.
We look totally gay.
I am gay.
Well, I'm not.
Then why are you wearing that turtleneck?
Personally, this isn't a mentality I can get behind. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should care about the mad scientist from Robot Chicken whose real name is Fritz Hohenmurder. Okay, didn't know that. Even shows like South Park, which have a consistent setting and reoccurring characters, has made it clear that very little persists from episode to episode, that even the most insane things that happen won't change the status quo, and that there's basically no consistency to how the world works, it's just whatever the subject matter of each episode needs it to be. But when a show makes an effort to establish continuity, inserts ongoing plot lines, or intentionally writes scenes to appeal to you on an emotional level, I don't think anyone should be shamed for becoming invested in it and taking it a bit more seriously. Enter Richard and Mortimer, better known to the unwashed masses as Rick and Morty. I'll be honest, I wasn't a big fan of the show initially. Season 1's visuals were a lot more ugly and off-putting, and the way Rick used to speak could get really grating.
I check in on him once a year and give him a little medical evaluation.
It wasn't until Season 1's Rixty Minutes where Morty explains to Summer that he's a Morty from another dimension who replaced her Morty after they died 2 episodes prior. This changed how you look at the show. It wasn't just modular sci-fi concepts in 20-minute episodic installments anymore. Continuity had been established, and now events actually had repercussions. Rick and Morty would continue this trend over the years by consistently doing more world building and adding more plot lines. The Council of Ricks, the Citadel, Evil Morty, Rick and Bird Person's fight against the Galactic Federation, Phoenix Person, Rick's dead wife, Space Beth, Bird Person's daughter, the Central Finite Curve, Rick Prime. When a show puts this much effort into setting things up and doing callbacks, they're not just okay with you being invested, they're banking on it. In Season 6's Solarix, when it's revealed that Jerry isn't in his origin universe and they realise it's because he got mixed up at the Jerry Barrie, who's this for besides people who were invested in the show? Who else is going to remember a 15-second scene from Season 2? And if they didn't think you'd care enough to remember, they wouldn't have included it. The writers want you to care, which makes it so weird that Rick and Morty seems to have a relationship with its audience so hostile that it's only outdone by post-Endgame MCU and modern Star Wars.
You're no Star Wars fan in my mind.
As early as episode 5, it was decided that Rick would repeatedly break the fourth wall. He'd address the audience directly. He'd keep referring to meta concepts like seasons, episodes, arcs, sequels, premieres, canon, or saving money through recycled animation.
What the hell was that?
Reusable Sailor Moon sequence. If we ever need to show you becoming my assistant again, we can repeat it and save lots of money.
Not just in a conceptual sense, but actually referring to the show itself. You can't have Rick acknowledge that he's just a character in a TV show and still expect us to be invested during more emotionally resonant scenes. He's already told us he's not real. If he doesn't care, why should we? But it's not just Rick. The writers have been using Rick and even the show itself as their mouthpiece to mock you for caring. In the Season 5 finale, after Morty learns Rick's tragic backstory, they decide to take the opportunity to express how much they hated the pressure from fans to show it in the first place.
Whoa, dead wife? Yes, now everyone can shut up about it.
But even without breaking the fourth wall, there have been more subtle attempts to mock the fandom. In Season 4's Never Ricking Morty, sequences are shown with Rick wrestling Phoenix Person as Summer fights Tammy. Plotlines established in the Season 3 premiere and which wouldn't be paid off until the end of Season 4. But we didn't know that at the time. It then cuts to an army of Ricks led by Evil Morty, a plotline established in Season 1, developed in Season 3 with the Rick-Lantis mix-up, and which wouldn't be resolved until the Season 5 finale. But again, we didn't know this at the time. When we see it here, it's like it's taunting the audience for actually wanting to see these storylines. The rest of the scene is played as a joke, but these aren't even what makes the episode so bad. It's revealed that this isn't even the Rick and Morty, these are just toy versions of Rick and Morty on a toy train Morty bought from the Citadel gift shop. Not that we, the audience, could ever have known that. This establishes a precedent that just because you're watching Rick and Morty doesn't mean it's the Rick and Morty. A concept revisited in Season 5's Mortiplicity, which basically revolves around endless decoy copies of the Smith family killing each other, each seeming as though they're the real one until they're murdered and we move on to the next. Between never ricking Morty and Mortyplicity, I couldn't help but think the writers were trying to desensitize us and devalue our attachment to the concept of the real Rick and Morty. You shouldn't care because you can never tell, so just stop worrying about it. Hell, in Season 5's finale, they kill Morty. I mean, blink and you'll miss it, but they do kill him. Similarly, in Season 3's Morty's Mind Blowers, it's heavily implied that Rick and Morty had to move to a new reality.
We have to pack up and move to a new reality, Morty. You know, I said we can only do that a couple of times.
But it's so out of nowhere and creates so much confusion that it's less of a headache just to consider the whole thing non-canon. Personally, I think all this meta crap could have been resolved in Season 6's full meta Jack Rick, which establishes the concept of meta-reality. You just need to have Rick tell Morty that whenever he references seasons or episodes, he's doing it to annoy the people in meta-reality. Now whenever Rick breaks the fourth wall, he's breaking the fourth wall established within the show's universe, rather than the actual fourth wall between the show and the audience. Instead, the writers doubled down, having Rick reference his own nods to the audience.
I mean, it's funny when I do a little nod to the viewers, but— What viewers? That's the right attitude, Morty. A few carefree verbal asides always by me, none of this Season 3 moonlighting shit.
And the whole episode comes off as frankly incredibly self-indulgent. We get it, you understand what tropes are. Don't break your arm patting yourself on the back by writing an entire episode about it. So what's the deal with this? Why does Rick and Morty seem to have such disdain for its audience? Well, there's no irrefutable smoking gun exactly, but our best bet is to look at the show's creators, Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland. Let's go with Justin first, since his recent controversy has revealed that Roiland hasn't had any meaningful creative presence on the show besides voicing the main characters since Season 3, with Morty's Mind Blowers being the last episode he was credited as a writer. In an interview back in 2021, Roiland said, "We're at odds with that because we're, like you said, we have these serialized things that we're acknowledging and we're paying things off emotionally and narratively and stuff. There's consequences and time is going on, marching on. There's Jerry and Beth splitting up for a while and then getting back. Just all the stuff that's happening that is serialized. Yet we still have them all stay the same age, which is kind of funny, interesting. Who cares? It's like, we can do whatever we want. We can do whatever we want isn't a great quote to sum up how you feel about narrative payoffs.
We really liked the idea of Rick's backstory being a fake out.
In 2018, Roiland was given his own show, Solar Opposites, which took an even more antagonistic stance against canon and serialized drama.
We better not be fucking sitting here at the beginning of the next episode. I expect us to be in a whole other place.
Actually, I think it's kind of—
No, shut the fuck up. No more connecting episodes or any of that other streaming bullshit.
The only ongoing story in Solar Opposites is a B-plot about humans one of the aliens shrinks down and puts in a terrarium known as the Wall. The whole concept is played completely straight, likely as a joke, a juxtaposition to the absurd and inconsequential nature of the rest of the show. The only problem being that it's easily the best part of the show. I probably wouldn't watch it if it was pitched to me by itself, but when it's either The Wall or continuing to watch Solar Opposites,
You're just jealous of my swish.
God, that's so fucking cool.
it's a pretty easy decision. However, Roiland was in the same situation with Solar Opposites. When accusations came out, many employees said they'd never even met him. So even if Roiland does hate serialized drama, his lack of involvement in these shows makes it increasingly unlikely that he's the cause. So let's look at Rick and Morty's other creator, Dan Harmon. Dan Harmon has something of a reputation of not exactly being the easiest person to work with.
I felt like I was walking on eggshells every time I walked in the office. He said stuff that made me feel bad inside. So I just was like, honestly, it's like him or me, because I don't want to feel this way.
And when it comes to Rick and Morty specifically, Dan has said some stuff that pretty clearly goes against what invested fans want from the show.
I was always like, that's your shark, you're gonna jump. Don't start explaining Rick for real.
I mean, some really hard to defend stuff.
The tension between the canonical, serialized, mythical storylines and that one-off, who cares if you've ever seen this show before energy. The first of those two things, think of that like gravity. It's like a thing that happens to your show if you care about it. Because it's going to happen, in my opinion, a responsible engineer fights it, spends the entire time fighting it, hating it. I hate gravity. Why? I want to fly.
So Dan openly admits that not only does he hate storylines, it's his responsibility to hate them and fight them because he wants to fly. So that's it then, it's all Dan Harmon's fault. Well, when he says he prefers standalone stories and is regularly wrestling with the writers who want to expand the Rick and Morty universe, calling them intense, it's hard not to say it's case closed. But Dan isn't involved in Solar Opposites, and these aren't the only sci-fi animated sitcoms that are having this problem. Futurama has had multiple episodes now with the same issues. In the late Philip J. Fry, Bender and the Professor travel forward in time through two big bangs, which creates identical universes to the one they left. The episode ends with the trio assuming the lives of the counterparts they accidentally killed when they landed. However, this means that all the characters besides Fry, Bender, and the Professor prior to this episode are dead, and going forward, we're just seeing their identical universe-free counterparts. Don't get me wrong, I love this episode, but when you consider the implications, it's kind of depressing. In All the Way Down, it's heavily implied that the Futurama universe is a simulation due to establishing that Bender entering a simulation is a one-way trip. And what definitely seems like a Bender from a higher level simulation entering his body to provide the solution to the episode. The whole episode is a pretty neat concept, but Futurama is well known for pulling the heartstrings of its audience, which becomes increasingly difficult to do when you establish that even in their own show, the characters aren't real. It seems like the more high concept a sci-fi show gets, the more inevitably it will require the audience to let go of attachment or caring if something's real.
Nothing you do matters. Your existence is a lie.
So at the time of writing this, season 7 has 3 episodes out. Is Rick and Morty doing better? Well, nah, pretty much the same. In the season 3 premiere, How Poopy Got His Poop Back. Jesus Christ, these episode titles suck. Anyway, Bird Person's back, and it looks like he rescued his daughter. Off screen. Fantastic. Well, I guess that plot thread's resolved. I'm sure Rick and BP teaming up to rescue his daughter from a Federation prison would have been really boring and not have any emotional parallels to Rick's life. Better to just make her a stereotypical emo teenager. The sacrifice is clearly worth the joke. Oh, and naturally, because this episode centers around Mr. Poopy Butthole. Seriously, why do I like this show? Anyway, we get lines like this.
You didn't see season 4, episode 3.
You can't keep telling your audience not to care, and then 2 episodes later bring back Unity and use the turmoil between her and Rick to elicit an emotional reaction in your audience. It doesn't work that way. Anyway, this is all just my opinion. Maybe my IQ isn't high enough to understand this show, or maybe I'm just stupid for caring so much. Either way, let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you in the next one.
Everybody fuck off.